Some calls aren't meant for you. Some systems aren't meant to be touched. And sometimes the sky tilts because you picked up. Good evening, darlings. If this is your first time here, welcome. I am Horrormancer, mistress of the macabre and curator of creepy chronicles. And because I like you, I share the good ones. And if you've been here before, well, I knew you'd find your way back. Before we begin, a small housekeeping note. If you enjoy modern horror, contained catastrophes, and stories that politely wait for someone else to answer first, go ahead and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, and more importantly, it saves me the trouble of finding you at cruising altitude. Now, tonight's story. It begins somewhere very ordinary. Numbered rows, beverage carts, safety demonstrations delivered with practiced warmth, a red-eye flight over open ocean, no rituals, no forbidden books, no reckless curiosity, just a professional doing her job. Our narrator isn't chasing shadows. She isn't tempting fate. She's answering a phone that isn't supposed to ring. And that's the trouble with systems, isn't it? We trust them. We assume that if something has been disconnected, retired, replaced, it cannot possibly still have a line out. But old lines don't just disappear. They wait. And sometimes they ring for the one person who will pick up. Now, before we take off, a quick word from tonight's sponsor.
Do facial treatments never seem to set quite right? Find it hard to keep still long enough for beauty to take hold? Then you need Stillface facial masks, the disciplined solution for skin that demands cooperation. Each Stillface mask is carefully prepared to mold perfectly to your features, tightening gently as it dries to encourage complete stillness. Muscles relax, expressions fade, and as the mask sets, skin smooths, tones even out, and movement becomes unnecessary. Results are precise, consistent, and unmistakably serene. An absolute necessity for performers, socialites, professionals, and anyone serious about maintaining control over their appearance. Perfect for vanity rituals, preparation before important engagements, or moments you simply need to stop moving altogether. Don't rush perfection. Order Stillface facial masks today and let the mask do the work. For external use only. Do not speak, chew, or emote during application. Extended use may result in temporary stiffness, delayed expression, or difficulty resuming natural movement. Manufacturer not responsible for prolonged stillness. Stillface facial masks hold perfectly still while applied.
Tonight's story asks a very simple question. What happens when something counts, and you're the only one still awake to hear it? There are no demons in the aisles, no masked figures in the cockpit, no catastrophic turbulence broadcast over the intercom. Just a routine red-eye flight, a retired system, and a phone that wasn't supposed to have power. Because sometimes horror doesn't arrive screaming. Sometimes it waits politely for confirmation. It waits to see who will respond. So settle in, fasten your seatbelt, and if you hear something ring right behind you, don't assume it's meant for someone else. Let's begin. Hey, my name's Stacey, and I've been a flight attendant for going on 9 years now. I won't name the airport, not because I'm under any NDA or anything like that, but because I don't want this to turn into some viral guess the carrier game. That's not why I'm posting this. I'm writing because something happened a few weeks ago on one of our red-eye transatlantic flights. And I need to know if anyone else remembers it. Any of the passengers, crew, anyone watching the flight data, hell, even a frequent flyer who's heard of something similar. Because when I've tried to bring it up, quietly, to co-workers. I either get blank looks or the same weird line. That must have been a dream. But it wasn't. And I think someone, or something, knew I'd answer that phone. The flight was overnight. Newark to Lisbon, mid-March. Not a full load, but enough to keep us busy for the next hour or so. I wasn't supposed to be on it. Another crew member called out last minute and scheduling pulled me off my reserve day. I almost said no. I'd had a migraine that morning, and I was already running on too little sleep, and I didn't want to be that person. So I said yes. I remember standing on the jet bridge, sipping burnt terminal coffee, thinking how off everything felt. Not wrong, just misaligned. Like someone had nudged the world half a degree sideways. I figured I was just tired. By the time we were in the air, I'd slipped into routine. Safety checks, cart prep, passenger requests. We hit cruising altitude just past 11 PM EST. Things quieted down fast. Most of the cabin lights were dimmed, people started dozing off, noise-cancelling headphones went on, the usual red-eye rhythm. I was in the aft galley alone, folding napkins and checking inventory, when I heard it. The old intercom line, the one we hadn't used in years, started ringing. It was the old handset, the one boarded into the aft wall near the jump seat. We used to use it for crew comms before they updated the system. These days, it's just there, disconnected but never removed, like a fossil. But it rang. Not the high-pitched chime of a modern call. This was the low, muffled buzz like you'd hear in an old landline phone, buried deep under layers of metal and hum. I looked at it, and it stopped. Just like that. No click, no final chime, just silence. I stood there for a second, blinking. The soft overhead galley light buzzed. Somewhere in the cabin, someone coughed. Okay, I muttered, rubbing my eyes. Time to cut back on the gas station coffee. I told myself I must have nodded off for a second. Maybe micro-dreamed it while standing, which isn't unheard of on these shifts. Just an echo in my head. I decided to check in with Emma, another flight attendant working the mid-cabin galley. She's the kind of person who'd either talk me down or tease me until I shook it off. I walked down the darkened aisle. Soft snores and the occasional screen glow from a seat-back monitor are the only signs of life. When I followed her, she was sorting tea bags and humming something tuneless. "You good?" she asked, glancing up. "You look like you saw a ghost." I gave a small laugh. Just tired. Thought I heard the old intercom ringing for a second. Emma made a face. "In the aft?" I nodded. "Girl, that thing's not even wired anymore." "Yeah," I said, trying to smile. "Exactly." Emma and I made our way back down the aisle together, weaving quietly past dozing passengers and the occasional aisle foot. "I swear," she said under her breath, "you need to stop doing these true crime podcasts on layovers. Your brain's just looking for ghosts to freak out about." I rolled my eyes. It was probably nothing. Long shift, dim lights, you know how it gets. "Mm-hmm." She gave me a side-eye grin. "If the overhead starts whispering Latin, I'm pushing you out the emergency exit myself." We reached the aft galley again, and I felt myself relax a little. The familiar routine kicked in. Grab the carts, refill the compartments, load fresh ice into the bin. My hands found muscle memory in folding napkins and cracking open sleeves of pretzels. It was quiet, peaceful even. Just the steady hum of engines outside and the clink of tongs on metal as we filled the ice bucket. "All right," Emma said, snapping the lid back on a juice container. "Want to take the left aisle or the right?" "I'll take the left," I said, already stacking cups. Try not to get caught in deep conversation with 22C about the meaning of life this time. She groaned. "He had a presentation on an iPad with graphs." We both laughed. The kind of laugh you only have at 35,000 feet in the middle of the night, half drunk on altitude and routine. We were halfway through prepping the drink carts when I heard it again. The ring. Same tone, same place. And this time, Emma heard it too. We both froze. The ringing buzzed low and steady from the aft wall. That unmistakable, dull, analogue brrr, brrr. Emma turned slowly, eyes wide. "Nope," she said immediately. "No, absolutely not." "You heard that, right?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. She nodded once, eyes locked on the handset. "That's not even supposed to have power." The plane kept moving. The phone kept ringing. Not urgent, just patient. I stepped toward it instinctively, not sure why. Just a half step. The kind you take when you're trying to prove to yourself you're not scared. Emma grabbed my sleeve. "Wait, what are you doing?" I gave her a look. "You want to let it keep ringing?" She hesitated, then crossed her arms. "I dare you to pick it up." I raised an eyebrow. "Are we 12? "No," she said, dead serious now. "But if you don't answer it, I'm going to think about it for the rest of the flight, and I don't need that energy in my life." The ringing kept going. Steady. Like it knew we were listening. I stared at the phone for a second more. Then I reached out and picked it up. The handset was cold. Not just cool from disuse. Cold, like it had been sitting in a freezer. My fingers instinctively shifted along the cord, which had that brittle texture old plastic gets when it's been untouched for too long. The ringing had stopped the second I lifted it. But nothing replaced it. No dial tone, no static, no voice. Just silence. I glanced at Emma, who was hovering near the cart, clearly regretting every decision that brought her to this moment. I swallowed and took a steadying breath, slipping into the kind of tone I'd use if a passenger hit their call button at 3 a.m. with a complaint they couldn't articulate. "This is Stacey in the aft galley," I said evenly. "Can I help you?" Nothing. Just the hum of the cabin around me and that deep, unnatural quiet in the other end. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. I was about to hang up when a child's voice, soft and close to the mic, whispered, "10." I froze. The voice was soft. Too soft and far too close. Not like someone speaking into a phone. Like someone whispering from the inside of it. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Emma was staring at me, her expression shifting from confusion to unease. "What did it say?" she mouthed. Before I could answer, the voice came again. 9. My eyes met hers, and for a breathless second, we just looked at each other. Not blinking, not breathing. Just the two of us, face to face in the dim galley light, both understanding something unspoken. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a passenger. This wasn't normal. My mouth went dry. I slowly lowered the phone, still clutched tight in my hand, the cold plastic now seeping into my skin like ice. Emma whispered, "What the hell is that?" I didn't have an answer. But the next number came anyway. 8. I didn't even wait for 7. I slammed the phone back into the cradle so hard it echoed in the galley like a gunshot. Emma jumped. "Jesus!" "I'm going to the cockpit," I said, already stepping around the cart. My voice didn't sound like mine. Too steady. Too clipped. "What did it say?" I shook my head. A voice. A kid. Counting down. Counting what down? "I don't know," I snapped, harsher than I meant. I paused, took a breath. But I'm not waiting to find out. I left her there, standing pale and stiff in the galley, and made my way up the aisle as quickly and calmly as I could. I didn't want to panic the passengers. Most were asleep, a few half-watching silent movies or dozing with neck pillows tilted at impossible angles. But every step I took, I felt that cold echo in my chest.
10, 9, 8.
The countdown was still ticking somewhere. Even if I'd hung up, even if the phone was silent now, I could feel it continuing. The cockpit door loomed ahead, lit by the soft red glow of the emergency aisle lights. I pressed the call button and waited, shifting my weight from foot to foot like a nervous passenger. After a few seconds, the small panel clicked open, and the first officer peeked out. "Everything all right?" he asked, friendly, but clearly expecting something mundane. Spilled coffee, maybe a passenger needing oxygen. "I need to speak to both of you," I said, keeping my voice low. "It's strange." A moment later, I was inside, the door sealed behind me. The captain looked back from his seat, and I told them everything. About the phone, the voice, the countdown. I kept it as calm and professional as I could. No embellishment, just facts. When I finished, there was a pause. Then the captain chuckled. "You've been working too many overnights, Stacy." The first officer grinned. "Honestly, after 3 back-to-back eastbound shifts, I wouldn't be surprised if I started hearing voices too. You ever try melatonin?" "I'm not sleep-deprived," I said, more defensive than I meant to sound. "It was real. Emma heard it ring. She dared me to pick it up." "And a kid's voice said it was counting down." The captain leaned back. "Look, I've done this for 23 years. You wouldn't believe some of the stories I've heard from crew on transatlantic legs." "You think I imagined it?" "I think you need a break, honestly." My stomach sank. I nodded, stiffly. "Understood." The captain gave me a friendly smile, like he'd just helped me through a turbulence report. "Why don't you head back and finish service? We'll be in Sunrise soon." I left without another word. As I walked back down the dim aisle, the embarrassment hit hard, followed by something worse. The gut-deep certainty that the countdown hadn't stopped. The cockpit might have been all calm smiles and autopilot, but something was ticking down, and it was getting closer. I made my way back down the aisle, the soft hum of the engines pressing in around me like a blanket too tight to breathe through. That's when I noticed it. Everyone was asleep. Not most, not the usual mix of restless travellers and headphone zombies. Every single passenger. heads tilted back at unnatural angles, arms limp, mouths closed. All of them. Row after row, 40-something bodies slumped in perfect stillness. No shifting, no coughing, no whispering to seatmates under shared blankets. And no snoring. Not a single one. A wave of cold passed through me. I slowed my pace, eyes scanning faces as I passed. Eyes shut, chest still. No rise, no fall. "Sir?" I said softly, pausing by 18D, a middle-aged man who'd earlier asked for a ginger ale. I touched his shoulder gently. "Sir, are you all right?" No response. I looked across the aisle. The woman in 18F had her hands folded neatly on her lap, her head leaned just so against the window. Her lips were parted, but no breath fogged the glass. I backed up a step, then another. My throat felt tight. This wasn't sleep. This was something else. I kept walking, slower now, like the air had thickened and I was moving through something heavier than atmosphere. I stopped beside 20A, where a teenage boy sat slumped against the bulkhead. His phone had fallen into his lap, screen dark, earbuds still in. His face was completely relaxed. Too relaxed. No tension in the brow, no unconscious fidgeting, no micro-movements at all. I leaned closer. No fog on the window beside him either. No condensation from breath. I looked down at the pulse point on his neck. I waited. Nothing. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, no, no." Across the aisle, an older woman had both hands clasped around her tray table latch, like she'd frozen mid-motion. Her fingers were too tight, her grip too exact, as if someone had posed her that way. I moved to the bulkhead row, where a couple in their 20s had been laughing during boarding. They were both reclined now, heads tilted at the exact same angle. Their hands rested on their thighs, perfectly mirrored, too symmetrical. I reached out and brushed one of their fingers. Cold. Not room temperature, not dozed off on a plane cold. Deep cold. Like they'd been here far longer than we'd been in the air. I stepped back again, heart hammering. My mouth went dry. My ears felt like they were ringing. The whole cabin was a still life, a painting of people. And whatever had done this, had done it quietly. I didn't think. I just ran. Down the aisle, past rows of frozen passengers, past their hands and unblinking eyelids and two calm faces. I stumbled once, catching myself on the back of 24D, then kept going. My breath was coming too fast now. I could feel sweat prickling under my collar despite the chill in the air. The galley curtain loomed ahead like a veil. I yanked it aside and stopped. Emma was there, slumped against the ice cart, one arm still half raised, as if she'd frozen mid-reach. A cup dangled from her fingertips. Her head was tilted to the side, mouth slightly open. Her eyes? They were closed, but not relaxed. Her brows were furrowed just slightly, like she was trying to wake up from a nightmare and couldn't quite reach the surface. "Emma?" I whispered. Then louder, "Emma!" I dropped to my knees beside her and touched her wrist. Cold. Pressed fingers to her neck. Nothing. My chest was rising and falling too fast now. I shook her gently, then harder. "Emma! Wake up! Please!" Nothing. Just that unnatural stillness. That same frozen, posed quality as the passengers. Like she had been switched off. I sat back on my heels, staring at Emma like I could will her to move, to twitch, to breathe. Nothing. Just me, alone in a dead plane at 35,000 feet. And then, brrr, brrr. The old intercom phone rang again. Same low, dull buzz. Same vibration through the metal galley wall. My head snapped towards it. It wasn't just sound. It pressed into the space. Like a ripple in the air. Like gravity had changed direction and the whole plane lead towards that receiver. I stood up slowly. My knees cracked. My hands were trembling. The handset sat in its cradle, humming like it had never stopped, like it had just waited for me to come back. I stared at it, throat tight, pulse thudding behind my eyes. I didn't want to answer it again. I didn't want to hear what came next. But it was ringing. For me. My hand hovered over the receiver, just long enough to feel how cold the air around it had become. I didn't want to touch it, but I couldn't walk away. My fingers closed around the handset. The ringing stopped the instant I lifted it. No static, no voice. Just silence again, thick and pressing. I swallowed hard. "This is Stacey," I said, my voice shaking despite everything I'd done to keep it level. "I'm still here." For a long moment, there was nothing. I thought it might be over. Maybe this was just some sick joke from the universe. And then, the voice whispered.
7.
I opened my mouth to speak, to say, "Stop," or "Why," or "What do you want?" But nothing came out. My throat clenched tight. My breath hitched, caught somewhere between my chest and tongue, like the air itself had turned solid. I could feel the words trying to rise, but all that came was silence. And on the other end of the line, the voice whispered again.
6.
As the word echoed in my ear, the galley lights flickered once, then died. Total blackness swallowed the space around me, the faint glow from the cabin too far away to reach. I stood frozen in the dark, the phone still pressed to my ear, its smooth plastic now slick with sweat in my grip. And then I moved. I slammed the receiver back into the cradle with a force that cracked the plastic. The silence that followed wasn't relief, it was expectation. I backed away from the galley like it might reach out and grab me. My hands groped for the curtain, found it and shoved it aside. The cabin lay ahead of me, long, narrow and quiet. I stepped into the aisle. And then I heard it. Click. The softest pop, barely audible over the engine hum. One of the emergency aisle lights behind me blinked out. I turned just in time to see the next to it flicker, then die. Click. Click. One by one, the lights in the back rows began to fade. Not all at once, not in a surge. They were going out in sequence. Row 42, row 41, row 40. The red strip lights at the floor flickered next. I turned forward and walked, fast, trying not to run. Row 39, row 38. Every step I took, another row behind me fell into shadow. The kind of shadow that swallowed light whole. No reflection, no depth, just void. The passengers didn't move. Still slumped, still cold. It was like the darkness didn't need them anymore. It was coming for me. Row 36. I picked up the pace, heart in my throat, shoes whispering over the thin carpet. The lights above me buzzed, then blinked once. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see how close it was. The forward galley came into view like a lifeboat. Still lit. Still normal. For now. I rushed through the curtain, nearly tripping on the loose edge of the carpet, and pressed myself against the wall just to breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I had to hold them against my side to keep from dropping. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out the hum of the engines. For the first few seconds, nothing happened. No passengers stirred. No voices called out. Just me and the buzz of the fluorescent gallery lights. I almost let myself believe I was safe. And then, brr, brr, the phone rang again. Not the modern crew line. The old one. I turned towards the forward wall, and there it was. Another analogue handset, same as the one in the back, covered in smudges, yellowed from age, the cord slightly frayed at the base. Ringing. Steady. Like it had always been waiting. My breath caught in my throat. This thing, this voice, this presence. It wasn't bound to one place. It was in the plane. It was the plane. I didn't even think this time. I yanked the receiver off the cradle and pressed it to my ear. "Hello?" I gasped. "What do you want? What do you want?" I was shouting into the phone now, voice cracking, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. The desperation burst out of me like it had been building for hours instead of minutes. The silence on the other end didn't care. And then, soft and inevitable,
5.
that one word hit like a punch to the chest. I staggered back, gripping the edge of the counter to stay upright. And that's when I felt it. The subtle shift in pressure. The way my stomach dropped, just slightly, like when a roller coaster crests the hill. I looked up. The ceiling seemed closer. The angle of the aisle had changed. The plane was descending. Not the gentle, steady descent that happens before landing. No. This was sharper, heavier, steeper. The hum of the engines had changed too. Strained, rising in pitch like they were protesting. I dropped the phone. It hit the gallery floor with a lifeless clack. My ears popped. My legs buckled slightly under the shifting pressure. And somewhere, deep below all of it, the countdown kept going. I bolted down the short stretch to the cockpit door, every step heavier than the last. The incline was steepening fast, the entire plane tilted downward like a child's toy about to nosedive off a table. The pressure change was unmistakable now. My ears popped again. The air felt thinner. I slammed my palm against the cockpit call button. "Captain!" No response. "Captain, it's Stacey! Open up!" Nothing. I hit the button again, harder. "Please! Something's wrong! I think we're descending!" The indicator light blinked once, then died. I pounded my fist against the door. "Open the damn door!" No movement. No sound. My chest was tight, my throat burned. The engines outside were roaring louder now, the kind of noise that doesn't belong mid-flight, the kind that makes seasoned flyers clutch their armrests. I dropped to my knees and pressed my ear against the door. Inside, I heard nothing. No voices, no instruments, no one at all. Then a low, rhythmic click, 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 like someone tapping a finger against the yoke in perfect time. I don't know what it was. I didn't know whether to scream or pray. So I did neither. I stood up slowly, hands trembling, and whispered, "What is happening to me?" I backed away from the cockpit door, one slow step at a time, never taking my eyes off it. The plane kept tilting. The floor wasn't just sloped anymore, it felt angled, like walking on the edge of a slide. Every muscle in my legs screamed to brace, to fight gravity. Then the overhead speaker clicked on. The soft crackle of the intercom, the one I'd heard 100 times before, the quiet pop that came before the captain welcomed passengers or announced turbulence. But what came next wasn't the captain. It wasn't any adult voice at all. It was the same child's voice I'd heard in the receiver, whispering over the entire cabin.
4.
The sound filled every corner of the plane. Too loud and too close, like it was being spoken directly to the back of my skull. My knees nearly gave out. Every screen on the seat backs flickered once, then cut to black. The emergency lights up front buzzed, then died. I was alone in a falling plane, surrounded by frozen passengers, in near darkness, and the voice, that voice, was flying this plane now.
3.
Like a lullaby. Like a promise. I spun around, nearly stumbling at the incline as it pitched sharper beneath me and lunged for the systems panel near the galley. It was meant for emergencies. Oxygen resets, lighting overrides, circuit access. But most flight attendants never touched it outside of drills. But I'd taken the extra training. I'd sat through the optional workshop that most people skipped. I remembered the override code. I remembered how to force a systems recycle. It wasn't meant to be used mid-air. It could short the lighting, crash the comms, risk a full blackout. But we were already there. I tore the latch open. The switches glowed faintly in the dark. My fingers hovered over the sequence, ready to commit to something I couldn't undo. My breath caught. I looked back down the aisle. The darkness was chasing me now, swallowing rows, reaching towards the galley like fingers through smoke. I punched in the code. 729B. The panel blinked red. Warning. Manual override may interrupt flight stabilization systems. Good, I muttered. Interrupt it. Break everything. I flipped the switch. The plane groaned. The lights blinked violently, once, twice, then flared to full brightness so suddenly I had to shield my eyes. Something screamed. Not over the intercom. Not in the cabin. Inside my head. The descent jolted. Not stopped, but staggered. Like something had lost its grip on the controls. Come on, come on, I breathed, watching the panel cycle. Systems rebooting. Warnings flashing red and white across the screen. And then, from every speaker in the cabin, all at once, 2. The hum in the walls changed. I felt it before I even saw it. A shift in the engine pitch. The tilt in the floor softened, ever so slightly, like the plane was remembering what it was supposed to do. The warning lights on the system panel blinked furiously, then steadied. Stabilization protocol re-engaged. Cabin pressure, nominal. Electrical systems cycling. Come on, come on, come on, just hold, I whispered, fists clenched, eyes fixed on the screen. Behind me, the lights along the aisle flickered back to life in a wave, chasing the darkness into the corners and seams of the aircraft like roaches fleeing the light. The engine surged. Level. The descent slowed. The incline eased. The plane was fighting back. I let out a strangled laugh, part relief, part hysteria, as the sudden realisation washed over me. I might have just saved the plane. And then the intercom clicked one final time. The voice didn't whisper anymore. It spoke, clear and cold.
1.
Silence. No final number. No crash. No impact. Just silence. And then, from somewhere near the cockpit, a low chime sounded. The familiar ding of the seatbelt light turning on. The cabin lights flickered once more, then stabilised, humming gently at their normal brightness. I turned slowly. The passengers were stirring. One by one, like waking from a long nap, they shifted in their seats. A man rubbed his eyes. A child yawned. A woman fumbled for her headphones and adjusted her blanket. The couple in the bulkhead leaned toward each other and exchanged soft words. Every single one of them looked fine. Confused, maybe. Sleepy, but breathing. Alive. Behind me, Emma groaned. I spun and dropped to my knees beside her, just as she blinked up at me, dazed.
Stacy? She mumbled. Did I think I must have dozed off. Sorry.
I stared at her, heart pounding, unable to speak.
You okay?
She sniffed, sitting up, brushing hair from her face.
You look like you just saw a ghost.
I didn't answer. Because there was no ghost. No fire, no crash. Just the soft thrum of the engines and the sounds of passengers waking up. None of them aware that they had been gone. Gone somewhere else. Held in a pause I couldn't explain. And the voice? It never came back. Not on the rest of that flight. Not on the next. Not yet. I've gone over the flight logs. Talked to the crew. Emma remembers nothing but a short nap. The pilots swear we never left cruising altitude. The data says everything was normal. But I remember the voice. I remember the countdown. I remember feeling the sky tilt. I'm posting this because I need to know if anyone else has experienced something like this. If you were on that flight, Newark to Lisbon, March 17th overnight, do you remember anything strange? Do you remember waking up feeling wrong? Do you remember hearing anything before you opened your eyes? Because I don't think it was meant for me. I think I just picked up the wrong call. And I think next time, someone else will answer. And that's where we'll leave it tonight. The plane landed. The logs were clean. Everyone woke up exactly as they should have. How comforting. You can unclench your shoulders now. Yes, go ahead. Breathe normally. If you made it all the way through that descent, congratulations. You have excellent taste. And the kind of temperament that answers when something rings. So go ahead and subscribe. You clearly don't ignore strange noises in the dark. And if tonight's story lingered, if you found yourself listening for a hum behind you, tap that like button. And if you've ever picked up something that wasn't meant for you, leave a comment. I do enjoy seeing who relates. There are plenty more artifacts in the archive, of course. Some misfiled, some mislabeled, and a few that only activate when acknowledged. So come back soon. And if you ever hear counting where there shouldn't be any, let it go to voicemail. Until next time, darlings, may harmony find you, and nothing else.